Hey guys, welcome back to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. I'm here with Dr. Kori Probst, and she's going to help us finish up the series on meditation. So we're going to be 3 in and done on this series, Kori, but you had a great idea just to go over some FAQs. We started out talking about what is meditation, why do it. We discussed our stories a little bit and how it has impacted us.
Yeah.
Part 2, we talked a little bit about the physiological benefits. I'm a huge fan of the neuroplasticity, but a lot of the just obvious solutions to cardiovascular disease, stress, anxiety, all of those things are true physical markers because of the reaction to cortisol and stress and how that can be reduced just on a large scale with a chronic play on that. But anyway, we're talking about some FAQs. You get a lot of questions on this, and people have some really fun and serious questions. So let's get at it.
Yeah, I think they're fun and interesting, and just got to put out a disclaimer though first. I mean, I'm a certified meditation instructor, but I can by no means say that I'm an expert meditator, because I think if you put me in an MRI brain scanner, you wouldn't see what happens with like Olympic level meditators going on in my brain. What's interesting about that is it's not necessarily that there is, how do I want to say this? That there is less activation in certain areas of the brain. It's that Olympic level meditators have increased activation in certain areas of the brain that newbie meditators or amateur meditators have. But I mean, we could get into that later. Yes, FAQs. And one of the first ones that comes up often that we've kind of gone over already, but could use more, I think, detail is, why should I meditate? And being the counselor, psychologist that I am, the word that I key in on is should when I hear this question, because meditation isn't about shoulding on ourselves. It's not about a forceful action. And what it does is it puts us in a position to learn about how our mind works, what our minds do, what directions they move in. And it's a process of training our attention, but it's not one that is demanding and coercive and like sit your freaking butt down on the cushion and just get it done, like another thing on our to-do list. Meditation it's a practice of gentleness, which is something that most of us don't give ourselves. So why should we meditate? To practice self-compassion, honestly, to give ourselves permission to be exactly as we are in the moment that we're sitting on the cushion. And I'll say that a lack of self-compassion is often one of the primary impediments to a grounded meditation practice.
So if I could jump in and answer as well, we're gonna do the yin and yang Joe and Kori thing where you, as the counselor and psychologist, are talking about all of those just deep, gooey, nice things. You use that word gentleness, self-compassion.
I have more to say about that because that's what meditation is about. And yet it's practice, and practice isn't always comfortable, right? It's not easy. It's not like simple and kind and flowy. That isn't often how my meditation sits are. So
I want to drive the Mack truck into the conversation and say that there is a profound utilitarian aspect of meditation. And that's why I gravitate toward people like Dr. Dan Siegel, psychiatrist at UCLA, who is
I
very
know
big.
him well.
Yeah, I mean, you introduced me to his work, and as somebody who's really big on the integration of the different parts of the brain, both organically, physically, and some of the things that we may not even know yet
Yeah.
in terms of how the brain functions. I love his approach to meditation because he starts with an actual visualization of your brain. It's not, close your eyes and think about rainbows and unicorns. It's,
No.
let's just analyze or conceptualize this raging turmoil in your brain. And you're going to go into your brain and you're going to see, in these different layers, just more calmness. And excuse me, he's just, to me, a very practical person when it comes to at least introducing meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll summarize this point just by saying that when you say, we should meditate, and maybe that's not the way we should consider it, I think anytime we decide that we need to make a change, even if we're not good at doing it yet, if we can keep that as a heuristic in our mind, if we can say, okay, I did meditate today and I know I should start, and I was going to start this week and I didn't. If you just keep going with that, you're still setting the table for your brain to at least start thinking like you described. And why am I even meditating? Do I need to be focused on less anxiety or something like that? And you just gradually start steering your life in that direction just because it's now part of your thought process. But eventually, to get the results, you do have to sit down and make it a practice, because otherwise it becomes like somebody saying, well, I know I should diet and I should probably lose some weight and I should start. That might make you, perform a little bit better in certain decision points, but to really get the results, you have to do it.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And to do it with curiosity as opposed to coerciveness, because that's not going to make anyone diet well and in a disciplined way either. So if we can sit down to meditate with this attitude of curiosity, let's take compassion and the ooey gooey stuff out of it. Like,
we don't have to do that. I just wanted to.
That doesn't feel good for a lot of people, though. Some people might listen to Dan Harris. He has the 10% Happier. That he wrote that book, and he has the meditation app. And he has a podcast too, but that is his thing. He's a total skeptic with this kind of stuff, was completely uncomfortable with the idea. But when he had a panic attack on air one year and he was using cocaine and he was just in a really bad spot, he was like, something has to change. So this is what he started to do. And the word, he doesn't like ooey gooey compassion, the like loving kindness meditation, he changed its name. So now it's friendliness meditation because it feels better to him. But the whole point of this is like, be curious.
Yeah. You're
not going to necessarily feel better immediately doing this. It's long-term practice. And I'll say this, like, not to scare anyone, but what I began to notice when I started doing it more regularly is an increased sensitivity. You're like, Kori could be more sensitive. Yes, she can. But there was, when things become, because you get one of the consequences, I call it a positive consequence, is a greater level of clarity. Like, you start to see things as they, like, with granularity. Things become more real, right? So you're seeing things with a greater level of precision, and you're not, like, your head isn't in the sand anymore, so to speak. So you can begin to feel more emotion as you start it. That didn't last very long for me, and I would say it's going to be a different process for everyone. But I see that as a very positive thing that happens, because most of us are not awake in this world. We're shoving away and avoiding and pushing emotion down.
And I know you've got a couple more FAQs to get to, but
Yeah.
I would also say that if people could really understand how physically this changes your brain from a synaptic neuron perspective as well as biochemical, I'm convinced, and this is not proven yet, that this is a part of consciousness that can increase. There is a theory out there as people try and figure out what consciousness is that it is just a deeper and deeper and deeper level of interconnected neurons and your ability to use your brain. And the more memories and the more knowledge you have in those neurons, you create a bigger and more complex reality. And that's why consciousness isn't like, oh, you just flip the light on, God breathed a soul into your body and now you're conscious, but bunny rabbits aren't. We just don't see that. No. Consciousness has levels and variability among even different people. And so I really think this is going to be something that we see in the next couple decades, but meditation helps you access that and just become a clearer, better, smarter, more in tune person with your brain, as you just said, Kori.
Right. Yeah. That clear seeing that's an important piece of it. As the longer you do it, that becomes more prominent. And, at the upper echelons of practice is enlightenment. And there are a lot of different words for that, but what you've described is virtually what that is, where like the seer and what's being seen becomes one thing. Because there's just everything expands, and the ego dissolves. But we live in a world, we need our ego. We do, to live in this world. But so let's move on, because we can definitely get off track on that. One of the questions that I get often is, should I keep my eyes open or close them? And what I have learned with the shamatha meditation is to keep my eyes open. So there are other meditation practices that have you close your eyes, and that's totally fine too. But what I have learned, that is the practice. And there are a few reasons why I see that as very important. We tend to fall asleep when we close our eyes. So I've heard a lot of people say that, like, I get really drowsy when I close my eyes and try to meditate. If we're curious about that, that may mean that we need more sleep. But so that's one reason why keeping your eyes open is a good idea. The second one is that the practice that I do, it's one of wakefulness, right? This is about waking up, seeing more clearly. And when we keep our eyes open, the transition from the sit of meditation, the actual practice, doesn't feel so discrepant from real life. Like, our eyes are already open. We're going to more easily transition from the practice into our daily lives. So it's literally helping us to practice being in the world in a more present way. When we close our eyes, it's almost like we are cut off in some way from what's real.
So here's where I'm gonna do
you practice something different. Yep.
But because what you're making me think of is how there are different forms of meditation that lead you to different goals in different places entirely. Because my initial view of meditation is to, as I said, get very, very internal in my brain and create better integration, better awareness. So I have not done what you're describing, and I know nothing about it. So I'm going on just no comparative data, but just for the visualization model, I can say that that's where you have an ability, if you're not going to fall asleep, to really create new things in your mind, where if I'm just eyes open, focused on something, it might be more of a breath awareness, physical thing, but I'm I'm just steering over toward that other goal of internal.
Yeah. And it could just be with your eyes open, focused on internal. You can do that, because breath awareness isn't focusing on your breathing, because when you focus, it's a thought, right? When in the practice that I do, it's you are putting your attention on the feeling in your body of the breath. That's different than focusing on your breath. But in all sorts of meditation, I think the common thread is that you're putting your attention on something. Something is an anchor or a grounding point, in order for you to have that sense of abidingness and to move away from the totally discursive mind that's focused on what you ate for breakfast and what you need to do for the rest of the day and your retirement account and the fight you had with your partner and all of that stuff, which is typically where our brains are, where our minds are, and on all that stuff. So
yeah. What's your final FAQ that we can wrap up this series on?
Okay, this is a fun one. I get bored when I meditate, Kori. Am I doing something wrong? I kind of, you're nodding like.
I mean, that is the definition of meditation, but it's how you perceive it. That the goal is to
there it is
yourself. So yeah, I'm interested to hear how you answer that one.
Well, so my first thought is boredom is a thought. I'm bored. That's a thought. And if in the practice of meditation, the precise, if we want to call it procedure, is to, and the way that I've learned it, this is what you do, and I've mentioned this before, but when you noticing a thought, that's great. If you've noticed a thought, you're awake, right? The difference is if you get sucked into the thought. Oh, I'm so bored. Oh my God, when is this going to end? Holy cow, I have to sit here for 15 minutes? No, open your eyes. You're not supposed to have your eyes closed. Like, now we're lost in a story, okay? And that's the moment that we notice, we're like, oh, that's thinking. Then we bring our attention back to that object. And for me, it's the feeling of the breath. Boredom is just a thought. So is it that we're actually bored, or is it that we just recognize that we're having the thought and then we just recognize the whole story about what boredom is? Now, the other piece of this is, and I just mentioned this, we are so used to having things going on all the freaking time. Do this, do that, go there, see him, talk to her. Like, it is non-stop. And so when we give ourselves permission to sit and do nothing, like, we don't have to talk, we don't have to think, we don't have to do. Whoa. I don't know if I wouldn't call that boredom. I'd call that different.
But, one of the things that helped me, Kori, when I can tell you my very first on purpose meditation was because I had a goal for that. It was a compassion-based meditation. So instead of somebody saying, here, sit down in the middle of this floor and turn off all the lights and don't do anything, that would never work for me. So it was you who said, well, there's this one thing called compassion-based meditation where you focus on something, but you're training your brain to at least focus on that one thing you want to focus on.
Correct.
And that helped me get in, that was the doorway for me to say, okay, I can do that. And now what's the next best thing to focus on? And then, just take one step after the other.
Yeah. And so, I mean, even with compassion-based meditation though, where maybe you're doing a loving kindness and you're sending goodwill and kindness to yourself, and then to someone who's close to you, and then to someone who you might be in a contentious relationship with, and then to everything and everyone, you can still get lost in a thought. That happens all the time on a regular basis. if I'm giving a presentation, for example, and I get distracted by the guy in the back of the auditorium that's making a bunch, like, this really happened, Joe, and it was your son. It was so traumatic for me. Like, I'm lost in that now. Like, that's your focus of attention has been like redirected. And so what is the practice? Come back to present. Come back to that object, right? Trey, do you remember we were giving a lecture in Evansville somewhere, and I had a moment where I was like, I could not remember what I was talking about, what I was saying. Like, it was a tunnel vision moment. It was like,
what did he do?
My heart started beating.
What did he do?
Trey was in the back of the auditorium, like being a gorilla, literally trying to distract me, and it worked.
It sounds like Trey.
I hope he watches this, because it was one of the most traumatic experiences I've had. Like, I've had public speaking, but
leave it to Trey.
It literally, that's what happens all the time when you hear people say, I can't focus, like I'm scattered. That's the point of meditation, is to help us redirect over and over and over again. We begin again, and we begin again, and we begin again. So boredom, I would say, it's it's indicative of this slowing down effect, right? Where literally the mind is settling in a way that we're not used to it. And so it is perceived as boredom, because there's nothing entertaining it.
Yes. And, you know, guys, I would say as we wrap up this entire series, if I could say one thing that I hope is compelling to you to at least give meditation a shot long-term, you know, give it a couple weeks, see how you adjust, it's that you are truly changing your brain in such positive ways that, as Kori said, you can control not only your thoughts, but you can control and direct your emotion. You can give yourself a much clearer space between thoughts and your reaction to those thoughts or that stimuli. You literally have more command. You're creating more command, your neocortex, of your entire existence. And that may sound kind of lofty, but it's actually the only way you can improve your brain, is if you are intentionally doing that. As you continue to fill your brain up with stuff, you have to be a much better quarterback of that, so you can improve the quality of your life and your relationships.
You know, Joe, I just think about how we're stewards. So many of us are stewards of our bodies. We train every day. We do some amount of exercise every day. Why? To feel good, to maintain muscle mass, to help ourselves in some way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't take care of our brains in the same way, and our minds. Our minds deserve as much attention and training as our bodies do.
Great way to end that. Our minds deserve as much as our bodies. So, Dr. Kori Probst, health psychologist, thanks for your expertise and guidance in the meditation series. And for you guys, we're gonna keep bringing stuff to you. So please subscribe on iTunes or YouTube or SoundCloud. You can always check out our content at thedietdoc.com. We put it there as well. And we appreciate that, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.